Also the Yisrael Amori. Balak, the son of Tzibur, saw all that Yisrael did to the Amori. So Rashi cites the Midrash, Omar, Elo shnei melochim shohinu betuchim aleim. These are the two kings who we relied upon them. Lo omdu b'fneim. They were not able to repel them, stand in their presence. Onu alachs kam v'kamo. So what chance do we have? Lefichach v'yogor, mov. Therefore, he was actually terrified. V'yogor Moav, Nea Omod, Kirafu. Moav was frightened or terrified from the people because they were many. V'yokatz Moav named Israel, and Moav were disgusted, meaning when a person becomes frustrated, he doesn't know what to do, he's beside himself. They were disgusted with the Jewish people, meaning their level of intolerance reached a level which could not be tolerated. Rashi over here on the post Vayokatz Moav, Kotzu b'chayim, kimo katzti b'chayei. As we find by, cites the Pasuk, by Rivki Menu, that Rivka says to Yitzchok that if Yaakov takes of the daughters of Canaan, it doesn't pay to live. Katzti b'chaye, I'm disgusted, which means it's a level of intolerance. My life is not worth living. It's when you reach a level of beyond your capacity to tolerate something, you feel like your life is not worth living. So over here, they reached a level, they had no solution. They had no way to turn. So firstly, the first pasuk refers to Balak. He saw that what Yisrael did to the Amori. Doesn't say what the people did to the Amori. And then when it says they could not contain themselves due to not having a solution, it says Ne'om Kirafu. They were terrified because of the people Kirafu, because they were many. So we're going from the classification of the Yisrael to the reference referring to the Klal Yisrael as the people. Now, who killed Og and Sichon? Moshe. How do you kill two giants? It's an impossibility. Unless you're Yisrael. It's something which is based on a supernatural ability. It's only because you don't deal within the conventional approaches of war, and therefore it was Yisrael. He saw what Yisrael did. The power of the Jew is Yisrael. Yisrael emanates from Kisarisem Elokim v'Adam v'Tucho. Yaakov had lorded over God. He defeated the angel, and he defeated Esav and Lavan. So that was the power. That was the basis why Moshe was able to destroy Og and Sichon. Humanly, it was impossible. It's only because he had that level of connection, therefore he's able to achieve that. But the people themselves, not understanding, the ordinary people, Balak, we had explained, I'd mentioned the Medrash, that it was more difficult to take down Sichon and Og than to destroy Egypt. In terms of their level of representation of evil, the representation of evil of Og and Sichon was greater than Mitzrayim, and I had mentioned that Moshe should have said Shirah after their defeat, but David said the Shirah for the destruction of Sichon and Og. Who could appreciate? Factually, they were just two giants. Paro, Egypt was the height of civilization. We speak about the chariot corps, the armies of Egypt. We see, quantitatively speaking, we see them. But Balak himself wasn't an ordinary person. He understood the struggle between good and evil. He understood this. Understanding the struggle of good and evil, he understood it's Yisrael. The commoner had no idea this is Yisrael. So what were they terrified of? The numbers. Vayoger Moav Ne'om. Moav means the common folk. The Jews are coming in. They're a few million people. They're going to destroy us. Kiravu. So in terms of the common folk, they were terrified from the Balak, what he saw was Yisrael. The power was not the numbers. It wasn't a numbers game. It was what Klausel represented. They are the representation of good versus evil. If you could defeat Ogim Sichon, what chance do we have? Therefore, as a result of that, Balak understanding the nature of this battle, it's a struggle with good and evil. Who does he summon? Who does he commission? He commissions Bilaam, who's the prophet of the nations, for this task. That his power lies in his mouth, as it says, because we find that we captured Sichon. The territory of Sichon was originally from Ammon. And because Ammon is a descendant of Lot, we have no right to take that portion. But because Sichon had captured it from Ammon, it was Tiro b'Sichon. Once it changed hands from Ammon to Sichon, now we could take it because it was no longer the territory of Ammon, it was the territory of Sichon. But how did Sichon take it? Sichon wanted to conquer that land. So even Sichon the giant was not able to penetrate that territory. It was only due to Bilaam cursing that community. As a result of that, that's why Sichon was able to take that territory. So even Sichon, as great as he was in terms of his representation of evil, he was not able to conquer that territory without the assistance of Bilaam, who the power lies in his mouth to curse. Therefore, although Moshe was able to defeat Sichon and Og, and it was Israel, but factually speaking, Bilaam is even more than Sichon and Og. Because what Sichon wasn't able to accomplish, Bilaam was able to accomplish. By cursing them, Sichon was able to conquer and take that territory. So in terms of appreciating the nature of the battle, this was Balak. Therefore, Balak saw what Yisrael did, Le'amori. In terms of the people, which is Vayoger Moav, Moav means the people, the Moabites, that was Me'om. Om means the common folk, the people, Kiravu. Now, when Bilaam had given the solution, the final solution, which was to enslave the Jews, and we discussed there were three advisors. Eov and Yisro were the other advisors of Paro. And when he had given the final solution to enslave these innocent people, where the Egyptian people were beholden to their relative, Yosef, who was the viceroy, he saved Egypt. To Yisro was something which was unconscionable. So how did he show his protest? He fled. Yisro Borach. Eov Shosak. Eov, he was opposed to it, but he remained silent. Bilaam is the one who actually gave the suggestion of the final solution. How do you control the Jews? How do you snuff out that Kedusha? Bilaam understood exactly what the Jews represented in terms of the scope of existence. And Mitzrayim, as we had mentioned, name of the Zohar of Shimei Choy, and based on the Balaturim, when we spoke about the four expressions of redemption, when we left Egypt, they correspond to the four exiles. And based on the Zohar, which the Ramchal cites, that we were meant to be 400 years in Egypt. We were only 210 years in Egypt. Although there were answers given in terms to reconcile the numbers because the bondage was intensified, but factually we did not pay the full debt. The full debt had to be paid, and these were the four exiles. The evil that Egypt represented is not to be believed in terms of their evil. They had to be snuffed out, they had to be destroyed. Bilaam understood the struggle between what Mitzrayim is and what Yaakov's family is. The only way that you can control Yaakov's family, the Bnei Yisrael, is only through bondage. Ultimately, they should become idolaters. Ultimately, they will be enslaved. And he believed this would actually, and we were holding at Mem Teshari Tumah. We were holding at the 49th level of impurity. And if we would have stayed one moment longer, we would have gone into the spiritual oblivion. We would have been at a point of no return. Bilaam understood this. That's exactly where he wanted to take us, into a state of oblivion that should not be a remnant of Kedusha in existence, which is what Klal Yisrael represents. He originally had put a spell around Egypt that a slave, unless he has permission or anybody to leave that area, they cannot break through that force. That when Moshe fled after he killed the Egyptians couldn't understand how he's able to break through that force, that invisible force that Bilaam, through witchcraft, had put around Egypt. Moshe was able to break through that force. And Bilaam gave him the guarantee, Jews are not leaving Egypt. I guarantee you they're locked in here forever until they will be totally snuffed out. So what happened in time of the Geula? Not only did Moshe flee 80 years or 60 years earlier, Klal Yisrael, 600,000 men above the age of 20 with the families left. And we're going to see in this week's Parsha how Balak says to Bilaam, when he told him that he's not able to curse the Jewish people, he's sure, you pride yourself that there can't be one slave to leave Egypt, to flee from Egypt. A whole nation, they didn't flee, they left. They left through their own initiative. They left Egypt. So what's your word worth? This is literally Balak putting the knife into Bilaam and turning the knife, because he suffered from megalomania. Could you imagine telling a person this? So Bilaam himself understood the value of the shibud, of the bondage. He failed. Bilaam understood the value of Sichon and Og regarding the representation of evil. That's being taken out. Now, the last vestige of evil that has to be taken out are the nations of Canaan. And that's why there's a negative commandment of Los Chai Kol Neshama. Every nation has to be totally annihilated, because these are the last vestiges of evil. Initially, Og and Sichon, they protected that, because they themselves had this representation of evil. Moshe takes them out. Bilaam understood. Bilaam sees this is the last stronghold of evil in the world. Canaan. Bilaam will do whatever he can to actually destroy the Jewish people, meaning to snuff out their Kedusha. And he understood exactly how to do it. Because as the Gemara tells us, there's a moment of wrath every day. And if he curses the Jews in that moment of wrath, this will activate the most intense level of Midas Adin. The Jewish people will be wiped out, will be annihilated. All the days that Bilaam attempted to curse the Jewish people, that moment of wrath did not happen. Hashem withheld his wrath, that Bilaam should not have any entry point to be able to curse the Jewish people. Because Bilaam understood exactly how to end it, except God didn't give him the moment. But again, what's Bilaam dealing with? Bilaam is fighting for his life. It's the fight between good and evil. The Jews are the good and they have the upper hand. Egypt is destroyed. Sichon and Og are destroyed, which are even more powerful than Egypt in terms of the representation of evil. I'd mentioned the Oz Yoshir. What is the Oz Yoshir? According to Rabbi Akiva, how many miracles took place at the sea? 250 miracles. What do you need so many miracles? And who articulates them? We're not able to see it in the words, but Moshe Rabbeinu, when he articulated the Oz Yoshir, every one of those miracles is alluded to, because those nuances of evil had to be destroyed, and therefore you needed all those various levels of miracle to destroy every level of that evil which Egypt represented. That's the Oz Yoshir. And that's why the nations of Canaan trembled. It says, Alufi Edom, Elei Moav, the princes of Moab, they all trembled. Because if you could destroy Egypt in such a manner, and there was not a stone left unturned to destroy every aspect, every vestige of Egypt, what's next? The next is us. Elei Moav. Canaan. And that's exactly what Bilaam is dealing with at this moment. Balak understands the man to bring into the picture. The man who originally appreciated the struggle of good and evil, like nobody understood it. And that's why he suggested the bondage. Bilaam, Yisro being the tzaddik, and he already served all the deities in the world, and he came to the recognition of monotheism. That's Yisro. Yisro appreciated the value of Kedusha. Everything else is false. What did he do? He fled. Could not tolerate it. Because he understood if this is implemented, the world goes back to pre-existence. If Bilaam should succeed with this solution. Eov did not have that capacity to openly protest. Because Eov was not Yisro. He remained silent. And if ultimately, although he's a tzaddik, we speak about the travails and the sufferings of Eov for remaining silent. That's why all that came upon him. How do you remain silent with such a miscarriage of justice? Unconscionable decision is given. How do you not protest it? He was shosak. He remained silent. That's why he had this level of culpability and liability. But Bilaam, who he is, he's the representation of evil. As a result of that, he suggested all these various solutions, and now we're coming down to the wire. Balak understands that the one who appreciates it more than anyone is Bilaam. Therefore, who does he commission? He commissions Bilaam to be the one to counter Moshe Rabbeinu, whose power is in his mouth. We're going to bring a man in whose power is also in his mouth, because something that Sichon was not able to accomplish, Bilaam was able to accomplish on behalf of Sichon.